for citizen expression and all sorts of things, citizens petitioning their governments to do better and all that stuff. And if Mercy cared to check, the organization that I lead, founded and lead, Public Square, has been playing in the digital market space for quite a while. And if she goes back to some of the most impactful anti-corruption exhibitions, the exhibition, I want to think, that really started this whole idea of people using government documents and believing in the agency of the citizens to interpret these documents as they are and form their own opinions and come up with an action plan, was actually started by Public Square. You might remember our work in the coffee exhibition. You might remember a lot of work we did in the parliamentary exhibition. If anything, of all exhibitors, I was the only one who got direct death threats from the Speaker of Parliament. So for someone to come and say, oh, I'm just wet behind the ears, I am a government spokesman, I am getting people to go, of course, simply because I am using our own history to tell people that maybe there's another way. And then if you don't agree with that, it doesn't give you latitude to just insult and call all manner of names. We can be civil. Mercy, quite frankly, you have been on the activism block for eons. You remember back in the Black Monday movement, you remember it had the same energy, it had the same vigor, it had the same anger. We've been banging our heads against the wall using the same process, and we come back to the same conclusion. When you frame the narrative into we are fighting an oppressor, we need to get rid of an oppressor, you reduce the whole idea to just the few citizens who believe the only problem this country has is President Museveni. President Museveni is, in his 80s? Very few Ugandans, less than 0.4% of Ugandans can claim to be President Museveni's age or older. Biology will take its course. My idea is, my conversations are around what happens if tomorrow we wake up and the president died in his sleep. Will your entire cause disappear? Shall we say the dictator has gone, therefore Uganda has peace? Are we going to wake up to Uganda that is fantastic and working for everyone? Are we going to wake up to Uganda that has medicines in all hospitals and doctors on the wards? Are we going to have to wake up to Uganda with potholes gone and everything working? No. And that's the conversation I'm beseeching people to have. It does not mean I am against people walking onto the street. Now, I understand that society is built on narratives, and oftentimes there's this saying that you English speakers have, and I'm sure, Mercy, you're very familiar with this. If you want to beat up a dog, just start by giving it a bad name. When you see how my safe corridor conversation in the wake to the March to Parliament was framed, you would think Natif came out and said, guys, don't go to the street. No, all Natif said is, there's an option of people gathering in Zambia at the police playground, give your speeches, then these people will move through Mukwano Road, no traffic, cross via Electoral Commission, go to Parliament, 4 of them go, Parliament agreed to hold a special sitting of Parliament, they present their petition and walk away and go home. Now, in a country where barely 3 years ago, in the wake of the 2021 elections, the government flawed people. It probably killed more than 100 people in less than an hour. And by some reports from medical students, some of these bodies were fed to anatomy labs in medical schools. I come from a medical background. I understood that. I also come from a civically aware family. I have seen that in Uganda over the last 40 years, we cannot claim to have had a peaceful citizen demonstration. So if you have citizens locked in a battle of wills with the state, and you want to advance social progress, you want to advance civic discourse, you want to advance and make mainstream the idea that citizens can protest bad governance safely, you cannot not propose such an idea. And was it popular? No. Could it have worked? Absolutely, because, the parliament tweeted it was expecting it. The police spokesperson for a day into the protest said, we have mapped out routes for everyone, please get to it. People, for some reasons that they believe, and I frankly respect that, chose the other alternative, and I hold no grudge. I am hoping that the people who are pushing this narrative, that Natif was against protests, go back and look at Twitter before Natif started being active, political Twitter, and political Twitter after Natif started active, after Public Square started playing in the space of exhibitions and before. And then let's come back and argue on the data. Now, I will go to Hashim Kapia. I have just 2 people to answer. I'm really sorry. I'll go to Hashim Kapia. I have to thank you for your submission, Hashim. I really like the tone and the ideas you advanced. We fundamentally differ on the methods, but we all agree that we all need collective input. You say, on the other hand, and here I disagree, that I spend so much time on demanding better behavior from the oppressed, quote unquote, than demanding the same from government officials. I also want you to go back on the TL and look at which organization playing in this social media space has exposed more corruption scandals in this country in this year than Public Square. I challenge you to bring those data and we run them side by side. You can even combine the top 10 organizations that you believe are working in this anti-corruption space. Bring the data and say, these 10 organizations combined have worked on Umeme, they have worked on this, they have worked on Parliament, they've worked on this. And then Public Square and myself will bring the data and show you the campaigns we've pushed over that year. And I believe you me, our campaigns will outnumber these campaigns. It's just that you're buying into a false narrative that we are somehow, by suggesting a non-partisan approach, because we are firm believers that the politics of division is not what's going to build this country. It is the politics of uniting everyone. It is not. It shouldn't be framed as a zero-sum game. It's us against the oppressors. These oppressors are as oppressed as we are. Now, finally, Apostle Jonah. Apostle Jonah,
in a minute. Yeah.
Yes, just less than a minute. Apostle Jonah, all I'm going to say to you is, amen. I hope that your desire to grow old in this country and see, have your children see the Uganda you desire and Uganda that works for everyone comes to pass. Thank you very much, Solomon. And really thank you to your audience that has asked so many tough questions, has called me names, has done everything possible to make sure civil discourse is advanced. I think spaces like this are fantastic for building a society that we all desire. And thank you for the people who sacrificed to move on the streets and spent time in prison. I've looked at your stories. I've visited some of you. They are very sad stories. You're the heroes that our country deserves. And please keep at it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Anthony, responding to those questions. Let me come to B-Wall. You're welcome.
Yes, thank you, Solomon, and everybody who's been listening and still is listening to the space, and everyone who has contributed. As has been mentioned already, spaces like these are, a step in the right direction in the sense that, they create a platform for us to, have this discourse that Natif wants us to have, but then also listen to people's stories and not just shut people down, right? Two things I want to mention as I kind of, wind up maybe. One is that I think it would be in this regime's best interest to listen to people, right? And by listening to people, I mean listen to the young population, because as has been said over and over again, Uganda is mostly a young country in the sense of the population is a young population. But the reason why I worry for their ability or their willingness to listen is, while the population is young, their leaders are not young. The average age of ministers, 65, 67 years old, which should tell you the intent and the purpose of the people at the top, that while we might want them to listen to us, they might not be too bad to listen. That's one. The other thing we need to understand as young people in Uganda is that we are at a very interesting point in our history, that the things we are doing now will meet a lot of opposition. And that's for sure. They will meet, we'll come across so many hurdles and whatnot, but we must not give up. Yes. And somebody already mentioned that everybody has a role to play. Your role might not be walking on the street and getting arrested. Your role might be, going out there and writing something. Your role might be being in a church during a sermon, telling your congregation about the issues. Your role might be actually being in parliament and legislating. Your role might be speaking directly to people who are corrupt. So everybody has a role to play. The one thing, as Mercy mentioned here rightly, the one thing we cannot afford to do is to think one person's role is weaker or stronger than another person's role. It's that simple, because we are all fighting for the same thing, which is a better country. It's as simple as that. The other thing that the young people in Uganda also need to understand, and why I said it's a very interesting time in our history, is that the young person in Uganda, if you compare them to the young person in Kenya, and we're talking about, the people who are leading the revolution and whatnot, the young person in Kenya has seen a minimum of 4 presidents. William Ruto is president now. Before him, they saw Uhuru Kenyatta. Before him, they saw Mwai Kibaki. Before him, they saw Arap Moi, right? So they have some kind of understanding and appreciation of change. They see it has happened in their lifetime. The young person in Uganda, on the other hand, cannot even fathom. Their understanding of change is obscure. It's developed out of thin air. So it's understandable when we have this call for people to join the revolution, and there's 2, 3, 4, 5 people on the street. It's understandable. The young person in Uganda, for you to sell change to them, it's a bit of a trick, right? But that does not stop us from fighting for that change. That does not stop us from going on the good journey. That does not stop us from preaching against the things that we think this regime is doing. And so for me, my belief is that the change might not even come in my lifetime, right? But it will never discourage me from fighting, right? There might be people who are on the front line with me, but they have wrong motives. That will never discourage me. I might be in a position where, in trying to struggle for change, the person who's next to me is spying on me. That will never discourage me. For me, it's that simple. As long as you are well intentioned, forget about everything else. And I think, in summary, while I understand, people like Natif, I want to say, speaking truth to, our revolution and occasionally poking holes in it here and there, I think we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we, who are actually trying to, to create change, are the same people talking down the change. That would be a disservice to us. And I think we would be doing this great nation a very, very huge disservice. I think everybody has a role to play. Every young person should recognize that we are at a very strange time in our history where everybody should wake up, rise up, and finally, no matter what you do, no matter where you are, never think that your contribution is insignificant. Never ever think that. Never think your contribution is insignificant. Everyone has a role to play. Thank you, Solomon.
Thank you very much, Bernard, for that. Precious, you're welcome. Precious, are you there? All right.
Yes,
Toko?
Solomon, I'm right here.
Okay, Karibu.
Okay, thank you. I'll start from the point of being accommodative. I think Ugandans are the most accommodative people that I know. Having a speaker who is corrupt, sanctioned, the prime minister, the deputy president, all the ministers being, corrupt. Not long ago, we are all, implicated in this iron shift saga. I think Ugandans are very patient people and very accommodative. Sometimes angry, okay, but being accommodative, I think they are very, very accommodative. And then, of course, being in a country where young men are arrested and, raped just for wanting change, and then someone says Ugandans are not accommodative, I still think Ugandans are very, very accommodative. So, dear Ugandans, the youth of these Ugandans, I urge you to speak up, speak up, speak up. Even if they tell you you're not being heard, speak up. Because this is the only thing that we've been left to do. This is the only power that we still hold. And it's up to us not to let go of this power. Speak up until you are heard. Speak up. If you're not heard, shout. If it means shouting to be heard, shout. And if you shout and you're not heard, stand up. It is your civic duty to stand up and protest peacefully. Let no one tell you nothing, And I think one of the speakers was like, we always have like 1 million people on these spaces, and only 200 people showed up on the streets. Yes. In the 1980s, the historians know that in the midst of a country where everyone was tired of the system, only 27 university boys took up the guns and went to fights. You know what it means only 27 fighting against, a dictatorship that was running that time? They believed in themselves. So sometimes it's not about the numbers. It is the quality of the numbers. I think people already explained that. It is the quality of the numbers and the consistency and the urge and the need to fight and and end this corruption. Okay. So to those Ugandans that are on the course, don't give up. Be consistent. Time will come when Ugandans will hear you. They will hear us.
All right.
And of course, and I want to end by saying, I want to end by saying that Ugandans for the first time came up to speak in one language, leaderless, voiceless, and I want to say the march is still on. We are marching until Anita resigns. Thank you so much, Solomon, for having me tonight. It was an honor.
Precious, thank you very much for your contributions. Godwin Toko, you're welcome.
I hope now you can hear me certainly.
Clearly.
Thank you.
You're
I've been struggling. The whole day. But yeah, I think we need more of these discussions and spaces because there's a lot of research that shows that a huge majority of Ugandans prefer democracy as a system of government. Whether you go back to the making of the 1995 constitution, that was one of the most democratic processes, at least from what I have read, where so many people were consulted, students and everybody. They wanted a system of government that is democratic. Even more recently, I think it's an Afrobarometer poll that said that about 75% of Ugandans would want to be governed by democracy. Of course, that doesn't mean that our democracy is perfect. It simply means that there's much more work to do. And how that much more work is done is many times it's about leaders being held accountable by their citizens. Recently, I was in a talk show where someone, member of parliament, I raised the hell of a storm over corruption and said, why don't we just become a member of parliament? And that is the question we hear often. Each time you criticize, they say, why don't you go and become it? That shouldn't be the question we're being asked. Because at any one point in time, they're going to just be about how many? 600 MPs and one president and how many ministers? So the rest of us who are not in those positions must hold those who are in those positions accountable because their decisions, when not held accountable, is going to affect us on this side. So spaces like this are very, very important, and digital platforms like this are very, very important, especially for the young Ugandans who many times are told that they have a bigger stake in this country. Because yes, if we mess it up now, you could live the next 30 years in a country that is in turmoil or under dictatorship, another dictatorship, and things like that. Now, going back to some of the issues that were raised earlier by some of the panelists, I still maintain that everybody should be allowed to operate whatever method of pushing for democracy that they want. If you want to go on the streets, 100% okay to go on the streets. If you want to push for dialogue, 100% go and push for dialogue. I think where the problem comes is when you think that you need to push other people to do what you want. That for me is a point of departure. So push whatever you want. If it works, like I said sometime back in a tweet, none of us, not even the Ugandans who are 60 years old, have been in this situation where they were living with a dictatorship like the kind we have right now that had zero minimal regard for the citizens. And if you want to see that, I will insist, go to Lusanja and see what happened there on Saturday. Yeah, where the first excavator, I'm told, came at midday, and this is something that happened around 7 a.m. in the morning. So if you have such a kind of government that has very minimal regard for the people, people splashing the kind of money that we see they're splashing in parliament, the kind of corruption that is runaway corruption, the arrest of young people who are simply saying there should be no corruption and all that. So it is something we're all learning on the job. There's no expert. You can quote whatever you want about the Arab Spring. You can quote whatever you want to quote about Kenya and all these other places. Since we are learning on the job, do it. Let us also do this part. Maybe if each of us pulled from wherever we are pulling, we'll eventually get what we want. Yeah, and then finally, Solomon, as I conclude, I think the other important thing that we must say is that as Ugandans, I don't think, and I think Precious tried to make this point, and she did really well. I don't think Ugandans are people that are against dialogue. Many times it's the politicians that will cause so many problems for these Ugandans. If you want to see this, you go to any of the slums in Kampala. I am privileged that I've lived in a slum before. I have lived in some people's rich neighborhoods before and all this. And I know that in those ghettos, you'll meet there people who are the most down-to-earth people. They have different tribes, different religions, and they don't have any of these problems that people say that Ugandans have all the time. They're not fighting each other over politics. They're not fighting each other over religion. They're just living their lives trying to get along, facing the same challenges each and every day. So this narrative of saying, oh, you don't want to listen, let's push for dialogue and all that, as if there's a problem. I think many times it's that the government gives people very minimal space to engage politically. And earlier someone said that why are people talking about, for instance, Lusanja, and they're not talking about the role of the shadow cabinet? The thing with Lusanja, for instance, is that KCCA itself carried out a study that showed that landfill had outlived its usefulness, its lifespan, I think as far back as 2012. So it's not for lack of knowledge that these guys committed all these murders by negligence. It is that they just have impunity and they are corrupt and they're saying what will be done. So it has never been a challenge that we lack what to do. So for me, basically, with all that we have said today and with all that we've had, I think we need to keep holding leaders accountable. Whichever way you do it, that is up to you. I wish you success. I will do what I can, and I hope everyone else can do what they can, because I know that there are people who don't have hands, so they will not do things the way I do them. There are people who don't have my voice, so they won't say things the way I say them. There are people who don't have the means that I have or the means that you have. But if you do have those means, don't sit on a high pedestal and start telling us this is how it's done. Come on, sir. Come on, madam. Go and do it. Thank you, Solomon. Have a good night.
I see lawyers here, I see doctors, I see accountants, I can see everyone around here. Thanks.
Solomon, there's a message that I wanted to read as we head out for the night.
Hold on, I just have
from Raymond.
Yeah, I have Cliff, who also has to make his final views. Then I can bring you on to read that message. Okay, Cliff, you have the final say, and then I'll give my final thoughts and we close the space. Cliff, you're welcome. Mr. Cliff, are you there? Cliff? Okay.
Yes, Solomon.
Oh, okay. Your final thoughts before we close the space?
First of all, I want to thank you for hosting the space. And as a wrap up, I want to leave you with some crucial reflections on what you've thought and specific about fake news and misinformation on young people, especially in the digital space, and in our quest for democracy in Uganda. In today's world where information flows rapidly, fake news and misinformation pose significant challenges, especially for youth who are deeply engaged online. And these false narratives can distort perceptions, influence opinions, and ultimately impact democratic participation. And this makes it essential for us to be vigilant and informed. And also, the digital space, while a powerful platform for connection and expression, can also be a breeding ground for misinformation. And social media algorithms can often create echo chambers, hence reinforcing existing beliefs and amplifying false information. And our youth, who are often at the forefront of digital trends, are particularly susceptible to this phenomenon. Now, some of the things that we can counter these issues is things like media literacy and critical, which I believe are very key things. We also need to equip young people with the skills to evaluate information critically, to recognize reliable sources and question dubious claims. And by doing so, we empower them to navigate the digital world more effectively and contribute. Also, young people have a crucial role to play in this fight by leveraging digital tools for fact-checking, sharing accurate information, and engaging in meaningful dialogue. With this, they can help combat misinformation and promote transparency.
All right. For some reason, we've been losing you, but thank you very much. Cliff, I think we've heard you loud and clear. We have about 6 minutes. Tony, you wanted to say something real quick before I give my...
I wanted to read a tweet, at least part of it, from Raymond Mojuni, your colleague, this morning at around, this afternoon at around 12:46. He wrote something. He said, "There's a lot of justified anger at the state of affairs in Uganda, but anger alone is not enough. It's possible, even with a change of guard that's publicly hailed, we could remain in the same state or worse. How are we thinking strategically about how to govern Uganda?" Now, my closing remark is, how do we use the tools of organizing that we have at our disposal, including social media, to build a formidable force to steer Uganda into a different direction? Mr. Kakwenza has just tweeted something where he says, my grandfather, my father, and now have been saying the same stories. They're the same stories I'm telling my daughter. How to use the tools of mobilization that we have so that we can then, our children can tell different stories of of how Uganda functions, of how Uganda is governed. For me, I think Raymond's tweet today was very powerful and it spoke to my views. and approach to this discussion. And thank you again for everyone who has participated. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Anthony Atif, and Raymond as well has been on the space. Thank you, everyone who has been part of this discussion. Usually I take the last 2 minutes to give my views and then close the space. I think that what, for me, hosting such spaces means is that we're able to listen to each other, irrespective of our differences in opinions, and shape our way forward. And I think giving everyone an opportunity to give their views and respect them is justified. Isn't that what democracy is about? It's the ability for us to debate and listen to each other, even with our difference in opinion. It's very important that we listen to each other and forge a way forward. I think that the digital spaces present a very important, very great opportunity for us to tap into, to discuss these things. Imagine which talk show how much money would we even, pay to discuss all these things? Even the diversity of opinions, I think we can take advantage of them. And like everyone said, each of us have a role to play in our different spaces to actually make sure that we contribute to a better country. And for me, my pledge is that I'll continue to provide that platform and join the rest of you who host the spaces so we can talk through some of these things. It's really an honor hosting you this evening. Thank you for everyone who joined all throughout from the time that we began at 6 o'clock. It's 3 minutes to 9. I appreciate all my panelists. Thank you, Precious. Thank you, Bernard. Thank you, Anthony, Cliff, and Godwin for being part of the space. Especially thank you to everyone who's listened all through. It's been an honor. My name is Solomon Serwanja. Good night and God bless.